Now we are going for the main event. We will have a 20 minutes of Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Question can be written down in the chat box during the presentation, or you can using raise hand feature during the Q&A session. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Saeed Pahlevan Sharif.
Good afternoon to my friends, colleagues at Venus University and Taylor's University. Okay, so let me start with introducing myself. My name is Saeed. My family name is Pahlevan Sharif. I'm an associate professor in Faculty of Business and Law at Taylor's University, and I'm head of research and PhD program director. This is my email address here, saeed.sharif@taylors.edu.my, and I've shared my handphone number with you, so you can WhatsApp me even after the session if you had any question. I've shared my YouTube channel. The YouTube, just search for Saeed Sharif without any space. So if you are interested in research, topic research seminars or finance seminars, if you are interested in cooking, so you can follow me on YouTube. And also I've shared my IG account, Instagram account, it's dr.saeedsharif. On these channels, these two channels, I share my educational materials. Yeah, I'm originally from Iran. My hometown is Tehran, the capital of Iran. And I have been here in Malaysia for more than 12 years. I have been so localized. I eat a lot of durian. I have visited different places in Malaysia. I have been in Indonesia, not in Jakarta, but I went to a small, it was a small village near Jepara. It's in Solo, if I'm not mistaken. So we were supposed to be there for 3 days, but it was really beautiful and nice people. So we extended our trip for 1 week or 10 days. And in terms of education, my background is electrical engineering. Then I switched to MBA finance, and I did my PhD in business finance. And recently, in 2017, I completed a postgraduate certificate in higher education, teaching and learning. And I completed my PhD at Taylor's University in 2014. It was a very good experience. I mean, my presentation is not for marketing. I'm just sharing my experience with you. And in terms of research, my papers have been published in more than 100. I published more than 100 papers in scientific journals, peer-reviewed journals, and I presented my papers in, I think, 40 international conferences, and I won a few research awards. Here I just have shared 2 photos with you. And my area of research is mostly business and social sciences, and currently I'm working on consumer financial behavior. Now, let's start today's topic. But first, I want to share with you what PhD means to me. So what is this? You may say it's a circle, and you are right. But I want to use it as an example today. And let's assume this circle contains all of the human knowledge. So this is whatever we know in all fields, all disciplines. What we learned in elementary school is a bit of different disciplines, a bit math, a bit literature, a bit science, and later after elementary school, in high school, we again learned more in different disciplines. So let's say again literature, science, math, and if for those who continued their studies during their bachelor's degree, while they were still learning in different disciplines. In the meantime, we focused on an area. Let's say, for example, if it was engineering, degree in engineering, so we studied more in engineering. If it was business, more business. And in master's program, we mostly focus on our area. For example, if it's finance, almost all modules will be in the field of finance. If it's engineering, if it's, for example, electrical engineering, you won't study literature anymore. You won't study, let's say, physics, right? So it's mostly finance. And if you want to continue your studies and do a PhD, you need to spend, let's say, 3 years of your time and going through the studies, research findings, literature in your field, not in other fields, not in sport, not if let's say it's finance. So you won't study physics, you won't study chemistry, you won't study medical sciences. You will, during the 3 years of your study, you will focus on papers, literature in your field, right? And till one day you will reach to the edge of the human knowledge. So this means the latest findings in your area. And when you are here, when you are at the edge of the knowledge, means at the boundary, you focus on this point, and this is your topic, right? So you focus on your topic and you push the boundary, this area, for a few years. Let's say, hopefully, for not more than 3 years, and you push it, and push this boundary, and hopefully, one day, finally, the boundary gives way. And this is your PhD. Of course, the world looks different to you now because you are a doctor, but don't forget that the whole picture, the bigger picture, is something like this. So this is the human knowledge, and here, this small part is your PhD. Now, what did we learn from this example? Let me share 2 lessons with you. Okay, number 1. If you are here, I think you should see my mouse, the cursor. So if you are here in this area, in the middle of the area in the circle, and you start and you propose a topic, and let's say collect data, test it, do the experiment, whatever. At the end, when you are here and do your PhD in this area, so after 3 years, you will reach to here, right? So still you are in this area, you are inside the circle. So this means you are reinventing the wheel, means your study does not have any contribution to the body of the knowledge. This means that we could answer your research questions by going through the past findings, going through the literature. So there was no point to do a PhD or research on a topic here in this area. So what the important point is, you need to make sure first that you have reached to the edge of the knowledge. It means you are aware of the current state of the knowledge. And how we can make sure that we are here at the edge of the knowledge, we need to review the literature. We cannot sit at our table one day. I say, okay, I want to do a PhD. Let's write a proposal, and I just sit there and write. I want to do the no. You need to first make sure that you know what are the latest findings in your area, and then add something to it, right? So this is the problem. This is when the big problem happens. You do your PhD for 3 years, and then when you reach to your you go to your viva, your oral presentation, the final presentation, and then one of the examiners say, "Hey, what's your contribution?" There are already some studies that did the same. So this is not a PhD work. So the first lesson is make sure you are not inside the circle. You have reached to the edge, means you already have studied the latest papers published in your area, and you are pushing this edge, right? Pushing this boundary. And you may read the latest review papers. When you want to write a proposal, Just Google, just search in the databases and search for review papers, for example, systematic review or literature review papers, because they have summarized the past findings, and then see what you can add. And usually, actually, in the recommendation part, the last part of the paper, they have some suggestions for future studies that you can get ideas from them. Anyway, this was the first lesson. What is the second lesson? The second lesson is we won't do research here in this area, outside, far from the circle. Even those who won a Nobel Prize, the most famous scientists, they didn't do a research here. They continued what already has been done. So we cannot jump in an area far from the circle, right? So we don't expect, we are not supposed to do something huge. We are not supposed to do a magic. We are not supposed to do, it's not a miracle. We just need to continue the past studies, and this is your PhD. So it's not a huge thing, right? It's just continuing the past, adding something to the body of knowledge, right? So this is the second lesson. So the first lesson, make sure you're at the edge. So it means you are aware of the current state of knowledge in your field. Number two, we don't want to do something really extraordinary, something very huge. We just need to add something to the body of the knowledge. Just make sure that you are extending the past literature. Now, we talked about contribution. So my first example was mostly about contribution. In social sciences, in business specifically, by contribution, we mean theoretical contribution and practical contribution. Though there are some studies that they have only one of them. By theoretical contribution, we mean you need to add something to the models that already have been tested. You need to test a new theory, or maybe extending the past theories, maybe a new measurement. You know, all these are, maybe you integrate two different theories. For example, one of the theories that I think many of you may have heard is theory of planned behavior. So if you again just use theory of planned behavior, now the question is, what is your contribution, right? Because there are, I would say maybe, I don't know, maybe 100,000 papers on theory of planned behavior. So why you are testing it again? Then you need to add something to it, right? So this is theoretical contribution. You may add another theory to it and then extend the model, right? So, okay, nice. What about practical contribution? Now the question is, especially in business, what is the contribution to the society? How policymakers can use this study, your findings, for decision making? Whether you need to show that whether your study can maybe improve the quality of life of people, and what's the implication of your study in the society. So these are the practical contributions of study. So when you are proposing a topic, so it's good to clarify what are the contributions in terms of theoretical contribution and practical contribution. Now, you may ask me, usually, I mean, when I reach to this stage, students or applicants, they ask me, can we replicate past studies? Replicate means we repeat what already has been done in a new context. Actually, in social sciences, actually we need replication, because we need to verify the findings in different contexts, because mostly they are based on theories. We test theories, right? But and I agree that we cannot really replicate past studies and get the same findings. So we should expect a different finding. Even in science, I was reading a paper a few weeks ago published in Nature. They showed that, if I'm not mistaken, more than 50%. I mean, more than 7 researchers could not replicate and get the same results of more than 70% of studies. Means randomly they selected some studies published in famous scientific journals and tried to do the same, and in 70% of cases they got different results. Even in science, I think more than researchers could not replicate their own studies. More than 50% of the replications of their own studies failed. This means I did something a few years ago or last year or a few months ago, and I want to repeat it, and 50% is a chance I would get a different result. There was another paper I read in cancer studies. Only 11% of studies could be replicated successfully. So this clearly shows that we need to replicate. We need to test. We need to repeat the past studies again. But you need to justify why. We need to justify why. For example, in social sciences, because I'm from social sciences, I'm from business. You cannot just write that, okay, this study has been already conducted in developed countries, in the US and Europe, and there is no study in Indonesia, so I want to do one more. I receive many of these papers or proposals every week. That's the justification for repeating the same study is, because there is no study in Bangladesh, we want to do one study now. Because there is no study in Vietnam, in, let's say, Malaysia, Indonesia, so we want to do one because already has been done this study in developed countries. We want to see what's the results in Indonesia. This is not strong justification, right? First of all, for your PhD work, you need to add something to it. Pure replication is not a good idea. Number two, you need to justify why you want to do one more study, right? What is the difference between your context and other contexts? Why you believe you need to do one more study in your context? It means when you want to replicate the study, this means you cannot answer your research questions by going through the past studies. Now you should explain why you expect you may get different results if you do this study in your country. So you cannot just explain that, yeah, because we are a developing country, we have a very beautiful country, people here are nice, we have a beautiful sea, blah, 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 right? You need to relate it to your research questions. You need to relate it to your topic, right? So from the angle of your topic, why your context, let's say Indonesia, is unique, right? From the angle of your topic. So then you explain, yeah, because of these characteristics, we need to do one more study in this context because we may get different results because we cannot answer the research questions that we have in this context by going through the past studies. Now, why I spend a lot of time on this slide, I just want to emphasize that. Number one, pure replication is not good for a PhD work. I mean, if examiners, they see, or people who read your proposal, they say, okay, it's exactly the same thing already has been done, they may ask, what is your theoretical contribution? So add something to it. Number two, you need to, especially social science, I'm talking about social sciences, you need to justify, you need to explain about your context, why your context is unique, why we need to do one study in this context. This is very important. Now, let's now focus on a PhD proposal. Your PhD proposal is submitted as part of your application to a PhD program. It's a standard means of assessing your potential as a doctoral researcher. So the PhD proposal for admission, so some of us think that it's not really important, it's just for the sake of admission, but actually it's very important. The reason is it's used to assess you, to make sure you're able to do a PhD. We don't expect a very strong proposal, but because we know that you want to do a PhD and you are supposed to learn how to do research during these 3 years journey. But initially, for a PhD program, you need to show that you understand what research is. Later, I will give you some examples. And it's used to find a supervisor for you. So we check the proposal to see who can be the right person to supervise the applicant. So so you may ask me, have you rejected any case just because of the proposal? Usually when we see that the proposal has not been developed well, we ask the applicant to revise and submit. So we return usually it's like this based on my experience. Usually we return the proposal to the applicant as to revise it, to improve it. And yeah, there have been some cases we totally rejected it because we maybe the proposal was really, really poor. But in most cases, as I said, yeah, if it's not up to the level, we just ask the applicant to revise and resubmit. And in your proposal, we don't expect, as I said, something perfect. It's just something to show you have the fundamentals. And it's very brief. So you may write a proposal of 1,000 words, and for your admission. So you should summarize your ideas, and you should show you understand what research is. And in writing each sentence, each section of your proposal, you always need to keep this in mind. 2 questions. Is this statement or is this section is addressing what question or not? If not, no need to include it in your proposal. What means what I'm doing. So your proposal, each statement, each section needs to address this question: what I'm doing and why I'm doing this. What means what's the research objective? So the research objective should be very clear, right? It should be very clear. Later I will show you some examples. So it should not be something vague, general, right? Very clear. And so what you want to do should be very clear, and why you want to do it, right? Why means that what's the importance of this study? What's the contribution of this study? What is the research gap you want to fill? So for each statement, each section, ask if you are not addressing what and why questions. So no need to include it in your proposal, right? And so to summarize, in your proposal, you need to showcase your expertise and your knowledge of the existing field and how your research contributes to it. And we should not forget that research proposal is not a contract. So later you can change it. It's just for your admission. It is just to find the right person to supervise you. So you may change it later, and in most cases, most students actually change it later. So even you can change the topic, right? So just choose a topic for your proposal for your admission. Write a short proposal to just show that you know that you're eligible to study PhD. And in your proposal, so you need to just show that you have critical thinking skills, you have a good understanding of the literature, and you have a good understanding of what we mean by contribution. You have a good understanding of clear objectives. You have the fundamentals of research methods, and yeah, and you need to and you understand that you have an understanding of what's required in a PhD thesis. Okay, for the last one, design a project that is feasible. I will explain this later. So now, how to write a PhD proposal? What should be included in a PhD proposal? So we so far know that, from the second section, our research proposal is just something for admission. It's not a contract. We can change it later. And it's important because it's used to assess you, to see whether you are eligible to do a PhD work and to find a good supervisor for you. Now, what to include in a proposal? So if we follow, actually this is the most commonly used format. It's a 5-chapter thesis. So in this case, we have 5. I mean, later for your final thesis, usually you may have 5 chapters, and we use the first 3 chapters. We address the first 3 chapters in our proposal. So your proposal should address introduction section, literature review, and methodology, but very brief. I want to show you exactly what to include in your research proposal. But of course, a research proposal needs a title. So the title should be brief and informative. So don't write a too long title, but the title should be self-explanatory. It means when I look at the title, I need to clearly understand what you want to do. So the title should not be very general. It should not be too broad. It should not be like philosophical, right? It should be very clear. It means upon I see, I know what you want to do, right? Even I should be able to understand almost what's new in your study. And don't narrow it down too much. Some of the proposals usually comes from Southeast Asia. It's too narrow. For example, from Indonesia, I saw a few that they had mentioned, okay, we want to study the relationship between X and Y in, let's say, Solo area of Indonesia and the name of the company. Okay, this is like, I mean, we should not forget in many of the social sciences studies, we want to generalize. So if you narrow it down too much, then people may ask, so why you want to do a research on 50 people here in this area, or just one company in this area? Although later we may collect data only from one company, but in your title, don't narrow it down too much, and it should not be too broad. Too broad means, for example, if the title is corporate governance in Indonesia, okay, what do you mean? Which aspect of corporate governance? And what you want to do here? Do you want to test the relationship of corporate governance mechanisms and something, or you want to, what do you want to do? So not too broad. I will show you an example later to see, to get some ideas. And don't use abbreviations. Abbreviations is very common in this area, but in the title, never ever use abbreviations, right? It's very rare we can use. So I would say never use it, right? Abbreviations means don't write TPB, write theory of planned behavior. Do not write SEM, right? Structure push and modeling. So in the title, don't use abbreviation. And for your title, this is the thing I wanted to discuss in a few slides back. Data availability. Make sure you can do that research. Sometimes we have excellent ideas. We have very good ideas in research, but can you do it in 3 years? When I started my PhD in 2012, I finished my PhD in 2.5 years at Taylor's University, as I said. I had a friend, she introduced me to Taylor. So she started her PhD 1 year earlier. She started her PhD in 2011, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And then one day I came to Taylor's University campus. I even didn't know there is actually, it was not my plan to do a PhD here in Malaysia, but because I had other things, another plan. But anyway, one day I came to Taylor's University campus to see my friend, and she had a class, so I was waiting for her in one of the restaurants near the lake. And we have a beautiful lake. I'm not sure you have been Taylor's campus or not, but we have a very beautiful lake. And it's the signature of Taylor's University. Even the name of Taylor's University in Google, when you want to search, you can search for Taylor's University Lakeside campus. Anyway, I was there in a restaurant near the lake for around 1 to 2 hours, and it was very beautiful, and the weather was very nice, and light raining, and a nice drink, nice food. And then when my friend came to the restaurant, Then she told me about the PhD opportunities, PhD positions in Taylor's University, and then she showed me some classrooms, you know, the library, the area, and I just decided to apply. I applied and I got the offer letter very quickly, in just a few weeks, if I'm not mistaken. And I started my PhD in March 2012. Anyway, I forgot what I was saying. So yeah, she started one in 2011. I finished in 2.5 years, but her PhD took around, if I'm not mistaken, 5 years. Yeah, I think 5 years. So why? And she was a good student. She was a good student. But why she couldn't finish earlier? Because of her topic. She wanted to interview some top managers in publicly listed companies in Malaysia. If I'm not mistaken, in top companies in Malaysia. Is it possible? You know, even their staff cannot meet the CEOs. So she wanted to interview CEOs. So you cannot really find them. You cannot find them easily. But make sure you can do it. So this is very important. So this is one of the first things when I want to start a new research. The first thing to check. Now, after your title, you need an introduction section. For your PhD proposal later, you go, after 1 year, you expect to go for PhD proposal defense. In that proposal, you need to have all these sections that you see here. But for admission, no need. If you are interested, why not? But it's not necessary. For the proposal you submit for admission, you may have just one section. You address everything that you see here. No need to have subheadings. So these are just why I use subheadings. I just wanted to make sure I cover all of them. So what you need to include in your proposal, which can be maybe 1 page, 2 pages, but you need to address these things in the introduction. Number 1, background of the study. You need to start with a description of the background to your topic. So we cannot jump directly into the technical parts. We need to start with something general, something that gives some information, general information about the issue to the person who is reading this proposal. I mean, in this proposal, you need to explain why you have chosen the topic. And you need to, as I mentioned before, you need to justify the context if it's relevant. We discussed this already in the previous slides, what the importance of context. But something that is very important, and it has a subheadings in the later, after 1 year proposal, when you want to go for defense. Problem statement. So you need to provide a description of the problem you want to investigate, and you need to identify the research gaps. Now, I want to give you a step-by-step, a very clear instruction on how to address a problem statement, how to write a problem statement in your introduction section. There are 4 things you need to address. If you address these 4 things, done. You have written a good proposal. Number 1, what we already know about this topic. What we already know, what already have been found about this. So first you start with the background, as I mentioned, something very general. You just explain what we want to talk about. I will show you an example later. Then what we know about the issue. Maybe you may refer to some newspaper articles to say, yeah, in society we have these problems, or some research findings, the latest findings show this. So what we know about the issue, it's good if you address both theoretical part, means from the literature, and practical, means the real world problem. So number 1, what we know about the issue. Number 2, what we don't know about the issue. Okay, we know this, now what we don't know. And this is your research gap, what we don't know. And number 3, why we want to know this. We don't know something, why we need to know it. This means the significance of this study. This means the importance of this study. You need to justify, you need to explain why this is important, why you want to spend 3 years of your life, why you want to sacrifice your family time, why you want to sacrifice your hobbies, whatever you do. You want to, let's say, spend 3 years of your, dedicate 3 years of your, at least 3 years of your life. If you are a full-time, let's say maximum 3, if part-time, more. To do this PhD, you need to explain this, right? And number 4. So number 1, what we know. Number 2, what we don't know. Number 3, why we need to know. Number 4, how you want to know. How you want to know. For example, we want to maybe include a new variable in the model. Maybe we want to integrate a theory to know this, right? And research questions and objectives. Research objectives. We need to clearly state research objectives. Do not be creative in the format of research objectives. Write it exactly like this. To means TO. To investigate, blah, blah, blah. To study, blah, blah, blah. To explore, blah, blah. So to, for example, to investigate the relationship between corporate governance and firm performance, let's say, right? So this is the format. Don't be creative in the format, right? Sometimes my students think that, oh, it's very childish if I repeat what whoever has done. No, we are repeating in the format. We are following the format. We are repeating the same thing that millions of people have done. Okay? Innovation comes from the topic, from the method, right? So in the way you write and report, there is no, you should not be innovative, just follow the format. And I just mentioned that you need to highlight the significance of this study, means why you want to do this study. Let me check here. Yeah, okay. And literature review. Literature review is not a requirement in your proposal. It's not a requirement to, I mean, for the admission, it's not a requirement to have a section for literature review, though it's good to have, but it's not let's say compulsory. But of course, in your introduction, you need to review the literature a bit. You need to, as I said, in the first part of problem statement, you will mention what we know about it. So what we know means what already has been found, means you should review the literature. Maybe just a few sentences, maybe just 1 to 2 paragraphs, but you need to review the literature. Now, how to review the literature? The literature review should be critical. We have heard this critical review of literature a lot, right? But what does it mean? What is the meaning of critical? Critical doesn't mean that you should criticize other people's work. We are not here to criticize all work. Critical means, number 1, I think is in this next slide. Here. Critical means, first, you need to show that you are aware of the current state of the knowledge. Means you should find studies that are related to your work. Number 2, so you should find the studies related to your work and latest studies. Number 2, critically, you need to assess this. Assess what? Assess whether this topic is is related and how you relate it to your topic. What I mean is, okay, if you search for certain terms which is related to your research topic, of course you will get thousands of papers based on your search terms, and maybe all of them are in the same field that you want to do your PhD. But for each paper, you need to think, is this paper related to my topic? Can I relate it to my topic? So it's not just because it's in my field, I need to review it. No, we don't review whatever is in my field. I only review those that I can relate them to my topic. And relate them to my topic means, number 1, they should be used to justify your research gaps. Number 2, they should be used to support your hypothesis or those that are against your hypothesis. And number 3, if you have a research model or framework, they should support your research model and framework. So they should be related to these things. So if it's just in my field and it doesn't mean I need to review it. And one more thing about when the literature review means the part that you are reviewing the literature in your proposal. You know, suppose you want to search for shirts. Suppose you want to search for a shirt in Lazada or an online retailer's website like Lazada, what's called Alibaba. So when you search for shirt, you may get these results. The picture you see here is exactly what I did. I searched for shirt, and then I got these results. Now, what do you see here? Is a picture of some of a shirt, description, maybe some information about the manufacturer or seller, and price, and people's rating, these sort of things. So you have information some information for each of these products. But do you see any story here? No. I don't see any link between them. They are just independent items included in my search results based on my search terms. So there's no story, there's no flow here, right? It's just one shirt, black, then white, then another color. So there is no link between, there's no story here. I don't just see independent items. And this is exactly when you search for certain keywords, certain search terms, when you want to do a research. Suppose my topic is on body image and well-being. So I may use Google Scholar to search for body image and well-being. These are the results you may get. I got 238,000 papers, and for each of them, you may get the title, maybe the abstract or the part of the paper which is related to your terms, to your search terms, and the author's name, year of publication, and so on, right? So do you see any story here, any link between these, any flow of, there is no flow of story here. They are just independent studies listed one by one based on their similarity with the search terms that you have searched, right? So unfortunately, most of the literature reviews written by PhD students are like this. Means that they just, for example, the first sentence they write, Saeed in 2020, he conducted a research in Malaysia and he found blah, blah, blah. Then full stop. Sarah in 2018, she conducted a study in Indonesia and then found blah, blah, blah. The full stop. Then Ali in 2017 found blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now what's the story? It's exactly like search engine results. You are just summarizing each study in one sentence, two sentences, or one paragraph, and they are independent. I don't see any story here. There's no flow here, right? This is not the way we write the literature review. So for your literature review, you need to first find the papers that are in your related to your topic. Second, you need to think how I can relate them to my study by synthesizing them. So sometimes we write one sentence and then support it with 10 citations instead of 10 sentences, each of them explaining one study, right? So at the end, it should be story. The story should be, you may, it's one of the way we write the literature. You may start with a broader idea and then you narrow it down to reach to your topic. And as I said, when you are writing for each of the studies you include, you should think, is it related to my topic? Whether can I use it to support my research gaps and my hypothesis? So, and then should have story. They should be linked nicely. And the last part in your proposal is research methods. So we don't expect for admission to write a long part for research methods, maybe just a few sentences. I will show you a sample. So you need to address your study design. You need to show you understand what's for social sciences, whether it's a quantitative or qualitative study, or who are your samples, what sampling technique you want to use, how you want to collect data, and what is the data analysis method. Very simple, very brief. And finally, make sure that you are following one of the, in Taylor's, we usually use APA or Harvard style, one of those commonly used referencing styles, and be consistent in using it, right? So the formatting is very important. Why? When we send the work to a proposal, suppose the proposal is a very good researcher and it's a very good chance, good opportunity for you to do your PhD with the supervisor. But when the supervisor has a look at your proposal, the first thing that the supervisor will see is the format. When they see, oh, the person doesn't even know the format of a research work, so I don't think the person knows what research is. This is what happens when we receive papers for conferences or journals. This is the first thing. So when I receive papers for my journals, the first thing that I look at the paper, the format. The person doesn't know the basic format, so most probably the person doesn't know research. I reject the paper. I'm very sorry. Actually, a few years ago, it was, I think 10 years ago, a professor told me the same. He said, yeah, the first thing I check is the formatting. And I said, oh, she doesn't, why? The content is important. But actually later, after years, I learned that no, formatting is the most important thing. Not the most important, the first thing is the basic. So the first thing is formatting. So if the formatting is not good, you might get rejection, even if the content is excellent. Because as I said, the idea is if you don't know the basic of formatting, so perhaps you don't know research as well. And proofread your work. There are some software packages, many of them free. Make sure you check for grammatical mistakes or for, let's say, spelling mistakes. If you have a friend that can help you, ask for help. Don't just submit without checking, without proofreading your work. And yep, that's all. But can I show you quickly a sample?
Yep.
Or yeah, I can.
You still have time. You can show some sample, maybe additional content if you want to.
Okay, I have prepared a proposal. In the previous, after previous session, Hemal contacted me. Okay, you touched a lot and you didn't show them a proposal, a sample. So this was my homework yesterday. I prepared this proposal. I think this is what we expect. This is the minimum we expect for admission. This is the minimum we expect for admission. So you said, okay, first of all, this proposal, yeah, of course, yesterday I didn't sit and propose a new topic. What I did was I converted one of my papers published in a journal in 2017 into a proposal for admission. Again, this is for admission. It's not the final. It is not the final proposal. After 1 year PhD, you should defend. So if you want to read my paper, this is the full citation. But let's see how I prepared a PhD proposal based on the content I already have in this paper. So of course, the first thing is the title. You remember I asked you to not use any abbreviation. Do you see any abbreviation here? No.
Sir,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt. There's no proposal in the screen.
Oh my God. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. Let me share the proposal here. Okay. Do you see my proposal now?
Yep. Now we can see it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I forgot to share it. So, so I just quickly tell you that this is the citation, full citation of my paper. Let me highlight it here. This is the citation. So this already has been published as a research paper, but I use the content to develop this proposal for today's seminar. So if you are interested, later you can refer to this paper to see the full paper. But now let's assume this is a proposal. So this is a title. Do you see any abbreviation? No. But I tell you, I'm the editor of some of the journals. So many of the papers that I receive, see here, social network site. Social network site means SNS. So it's a very common term. Many people refer to social network site as SNS. So, but in a proposal, we don't write SNS. We need to, although almost all researchers know social network site is SNS, we don't write SNS in the title. We write social network site. So don't use abbreviation. Number two, it's very clear. We are studying the relationship between social network site use and online compulsive buying, right? Means there are two things we want to see whether there is a relationship between these two concepts. Number one is, let's say, the time you spend on social media. Number two, your compulsive buying behavior. Compulsive buying means many of us, we just spend because we feel good, right? Something like this, because you want to cope with your anxiety or whatever. So it's very clear, right? I mean, you understand there are two things we want to see whether there is any relationship between them or not. And I even know what's the hypothesis here now. My hypothesis is if people spend more time on social media, they will show more compulsive buying behavior, right? And I have shown the context here in Malaysian young adults. For data collection, I collected data maybe from 1 or 2 private universities in Malaysia, but I didn't mention here among university students in Taylor's University. No, we don't narrow it down too much, right? Malaysian young adults, right? Then the mediating role of love. And this is my contribution. No study before had tested these two mediation, right? So we added 2 variables to the model. And here is it. So my title shows a lot, right? When I see the title, I know what's the contribution, I know what we want to do, I know the context, and there's no abbreviation, and it's informative. Now, introduction. You remember I said the minimum we expect is an introduction and methods. So for literature review, up to you. But what we expect is a section on introduction. Let me scroll down. So this is literature review. It's optional, so I won't focus on it now. No need. The gray part, no need. Then we go for methods. You see my methods, it's just 2 sentences or maybe 1, 2 sentences, 3 sentences. So we don't expect for methods a long, a few pages. No, I have mentioned it's a cross-sectional study. We use questionnaire. We want to collect 2,000 samples. Purposive sampling, what's the sampling technique? We want to, the population or young adults in Malaysia, and what method I want to use, right? And even, I think this is the basic, right? So anyway, so very simple, just 2-3 sentences, what you want to do. Okay, or maybe I could mention it's a quantitative study as well. Anyway, so let's go back to the introduction, the main part. What was the first section? Background, right? So we don't jump into the technical part suddenly. So background. Compulsive buying is known as a problematic behavior that indicates an individual's failure to control his or her excessive purchases. Compulsive buying causes distress and financial difficulties and is classified as a mental disorder. So this was my background. So now we know what we want to talk about. We want to talk about compulsive buying, and the reader will know that compulsive buying is a mental disorder, right? Maybe I could provide a definition as well, right? But here I didn't. Anyway, then you remember problem statement, another thing you need to address. Problem statement has 4 sections. What we know, what we don't know, why we need to know, how we want to know. And now you can see them. What we want to know. You see what we want to know. Sorry, not what you say. What we already know. What we already know about it. We start with what we want, what we know about it. Okay, let me drink some water. It seems my brain is now. Yeah, my brain was working independently. So yeah, it was not connected to my tongue. Now, okay, so the first step, the first thing you need to address is what we already know about the thing, what we already know about compulsive behavior. So let's see. Compulsive buying tendencies are on increase in consumer societies. This is, and do you see number 3 and 4 here? Number 3 and 4. These are citations, means I'm referring to past studies, right? I'm reviewing the literature. So I didn't write Ali found blah, blah, blah. And then Sarah found blah, blah, blah. No, but who cares Ali? Who is Ali? Who cares, who is Saeed, right? So what is important is the content. So the content is compulsive buying tendencies are increasing in consumer societies. And then I support it with some citations. This is a format in citation. I mean, it's not APA or Harvard, it's different. I think, I don't remember what format is it. Anyway, and different buying environments, including data. So, and then citation here, number 5, citation. And all have been listed in the reference list. You see, number 1, 2, 3, 4 have been listed here, my citations. So this is what we know. We already, from the literature, we know compulsive buying is increasing and it's different in even in internet, I mean online. Then with the growing market of material goods on the internet, investigating factors which influence compulsive buying online become as equally important as the conventional compulsive buying. And the last thing, although the relationship between internet use and compulsive buying is documented, and then citation. This means we already know this. We already know there is a relationship between internet use and compulsive buying, and I supported it with some references. This means that, so I summarized what we know about it, very brief, what we know about it. Now, we already know it's increasing in the societies. We already know it's important on the internet as well. And we know that there is a relationship between internet use and compulsive buying. Now, what we don't know about it, little is known about the relationship between internet environment, using internet environment and online compulsive buying. And there is a lack of research focusing on social networking site use and compulsive buying. Also, research on the mechanism behind this relationship is limited. We don't know much about it. You see, I'm highlighting a research gap. I'm highlighting what we don't know. So we started by what we know, we continued with what we don't know. Now we want to, you can maybe, here I said how we want to know it, or you may continue with why we want to know it. Okay, now how we want to know it. Previous research showed that there are some variables that may be used to explain these mechanisms, and I use a theory here. So here I'm explaining, using this theory and using these variables, materialism and identity motives, I want to explain the relationship between these two variables. So it means in this section, in these two sentences, I'm explaining how I want to know this relationship. How? By including two more variables to the model. These are my contribution. Next. Now, why this is important? Why you want to sacrifice your 3 years of your life on this research? Because young adults are the largest group of social networking site users who show strong compulsive buying tendencies. And all sentences you see have been supported by literature. Number 10, number 13, number 14, number 12, number 15. These are papers, right? These are papers. And score high on material. So young consumers also are materialistic, and young adults are more confused about their identity because they have not established a secure and solid identity. And social media, you know, blah, 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 blah. So I'm explaining why this study is important. This is the significance of the study, right? In your later, for your final proposal, you need, I mean, after 1 year studying PhD, you need a section on this, right? And finally, what is the objective? I remember I said the objective should be very clear. You start with 2. So this study aimed to examine what? The relationship between blah, 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 and to test the mediating role of blah, blah, blah. So you write the objectives clearly, start with to examine, to test, to study. You may have more than 2, then objectives can be general or specific. So this was and then methods. So what is this part that is great is literature review. It's not required for your proposal for admission, but some of the students, they submit a proposal with literature review as well. So I just put it as optional. I thought maybe it's good to share this with you. So what I will do is I will, how can I share it? Maybe I can post it on cloud.
I think you can send to Ina or Shuyi, because our Shuyi, so they can share.
Okay, Shuyi, can you send me an email? I will reply with all, because there is more.